Afternoon. It is Tuesday, April 29th, about 1:15 in the afternoon. And today we are going to be going over part two of our Build an A plus essay with me. Today we're talking about the use of AI integration as we build some content for our essay. So we are live on social media and on YouTube, and in the description, there is a link for you to download the handouts that go with today's session. I'm going to project everything on the screen for you today, but you can also download these materials yourself. And I also updated them. So we had them up last night for part one. I actually went in and updated a few things. So if you've already downloaded them, download them again. It is April 29th, and I did update them this morning. So today we are talking about building an A plus essay. I know a lot of students need help with this skill, even when you have the tool of AI to essentially write this whole essay for you. You still have to understand how to structure an essay, what you're talking about. If you're simply just throwing a prompt into AI and saying, oh, I have to write this essay, write it for me, you're not learning anything. And also, your teacher is most likely on to you. I mean, it's very easy to see who is using it and who isn't, and who is using it effectively and who is not. So today we're going to explore ways in which we can use the AI to get us the content we need and the sources we need, and then put a lot of that in our own words so that it doesn't sound like AI wrote it for us. And we're going to explore like different ways in which you can do that. So hopefully I'm live everywhere. I just want to make sure that I am. So let me just refresh there. And I can see that I am live. I'm actually going to go to that little area and see if I can find my live session. And I don't think that I can on my actual YouTube feed. So anyways, hopefully I'm live and you guys can see everything that I'm talking about. So today, there I am. All right, perfect. Perfect. I just want to make sure that what I'm showing you, you can see. Okay, so let's just review a little bit of what we did yesterday. Now, if you missed part one, I recommend going and watching that first before you start part two. In part one, we basically took the prompt that our teacher gave us, our assignment, we broke it apart and we turned it into the structure of our essay, making sure that each part of the essay satisfies whatever bullet or whatever checkbox our teacher wanted us to do. So let me just review that quickly. We're not going to stay there long, but I do want to show you my presentation really quickly on that. And again, you can get this presentation by going into the description or go to KMJ Learning under free resources. It'll be there. Now, remember, this was our task, and it's over here on the left because we use this essay map, and I've left it blank here because you can download this and use it for yourself. We use this essay map area to write some messy notes to sort of structure our essay based on what the teacher is asking us to do or what our professor is asking us to do. We have a task here, which is write a persuasive essay arguing for or against. So if you agree or disagree with the following statement, social movements are the most effective means of achieving lasting societal change. So we weren't sure because we haven't done the research yet if we do agree with that. I mean, we definitely see social movements on TV. They do have a lasting effect. I mean, we think about them all the time. We see the images of them all the time, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, the labor movement, things like that. But then we started thinking, well, do they mean lasting change? I mean, some laws still remain the same. There's still a lot of discrimination. There's still some labor issues. Do they really have lasting change? I'm not sure yet. So we haven't taken a position yet. But what we did was we started to map our essay out so that when we started to do our research, we could easily implement that content and then take a position once we've read a little bit about it and done a little bit of research on it. It is using a lot of strong language, I will say that, saying that social movements are the most effective means for achieving lasting societal change. There are other things that do this as well. There are policy changes, there are legal cases. So I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna have a look at it. So then we broke down the task. We have the teacher wants us to define what constitutes a good social movement, and we said that would make a really good intro to our intro paragraph. We said select two historical examples, which we did. We went out into ChatGPT and researched some of the social movements over the last 500 years, and we picked two. We didn't want to pick these. We were like sort of over these. We've been talking about these for a long time. We wanted to explore a new sort of set of movements so we could learn something, right? And we want to write about something cool. We don't want to write about something we don't want to write about. So we picked two. We'll talk about that in a second. And then these were the other things: analyze the successes and limitations and take a clear stance, which we haven't done yet. And then we have to incorporate we are going to incorporate two primary sources and two secondary sources. The teacher's saying only one primary source, but we're going to do one primary source for each one of the historical movements and one secondary source for each one of the historical movements. So it's going to end up being two secondary and two primary. So we'll be able to satisfy that. So once we structured this with our essay map over here, we came up with a much cleaner version, and it looked like this. Okay, this is how we're mapping it out. And again, this is all done step by step in part one. I'm just reviewing right now. So we decided we were going to have an intro paragraph. Obviously, you're going to have an intro and a conclusion. Okay, you've got to have the bread of the sandwich, right? Inside the meat are going to be the details. So let's talk about the intro first. We said defining what constitutes a social movement. That was actually one of the things on the list the teacher wanted us to do. And then our thesis, whether we agree or disagree with the following statement that social movements are the most effective means for change. Again, we have not figured this out. This right here is easy to find online, and you can sort of write to that. So intro paragraph should be pretty easy, but I don't want to write it yet. I actually want to focus on these detail paragraphs first. They're easier to write, and that's what we're going to do today. So we did pick from that list that we gave ChatGPT. Let me go back to that. Let's stop sharing here, and I'm going to zoom right to our little ChatGPT preview here. So I'm going to go up here. This is actually way too. Okay. We asked, can you list all the major movements over the last 5 centuries? Because we weren't sure we wanted to do women's suffrage and civil rights. Not that those are not important. It's just that we've done a lot of those. We wanted to try something different. And so we went in here and we looked around and we decided that, and let me go back to my screen here. We decided that the French Revolution and the Occupy movement would be our two things, right? We thought they were pretty cool. They're like eat the rich kind of movements, the common people going after rich people and nobles and things like that. They have some similarity. One was way back in the 1800s, and the other one is during the 21st century. So they're miles apart in that situation. But we can see that actually 1700s, late 1700s was the French Revolution. I apologize. I said 1800s, but we can use these two to then become our detail paragraphs here. So detail paragraph 1 is going to be all about the French Revolution. We're going to briefly discuss it. We're going to analyze the success and limitations, which is what our teacher wanted us to do in the task. And then we're going to make sure we cite them, one primary, one secondary. Don't worry about this. We're going to go through it. Day 3. This is going to be tomorrow. We're going to really hit the primary and secondary source. You can see all about citing sources, but today we're focusing on content. And then detail paragraph 2 is going to be Occupy Wall Street. Same thing, briefly discuss the movement and then analyze the success and limitations. So it's very formulaic. Detail paragraph 1, French Revolution, discuss it, analyze the successes and limitations. Detail paragraph 2, Occupy Wall Street, discuss it, analyze the successes and limitations, and just start to plug in that information. We are not going to worry about the conclusion or the intro paragraph for now. We do sort of know the structure and what's going to happen, but those two things can be written at the end. Where the majority of your grade comes from on an essay, especially on a standardized test, if you're ever submitting an essay, or, if you're writing for your state test, or if you're taking the essay portion of the SAT or ACT, which is optional, but if you're taking it, you want it to really have beefed up details paragraphs. This is where the specifics come in. This is where your examples come in. This is where all the information comes in. The intro is just introducing it in a general level, and the conclusion is just closing things up. Where everything is, that's in the details. So detail 1, French Revolution. Detail 2, Occupy Wall Street. Okay. And then we stopped, and this was it. Now what we're going to talk about is how to get the information to fill this up. We have the structure. Now what do I do? All right. And so what we want to make sure we do is go out to ChatGPT and the internet and do all the things that we need to do to fill this up. Now, the last thing you want to do is just be copying from ChatGPT. You're still going to copy from ChatGPT, but you're going to sort of piece things together. You're not just going with the first round of whatever ChatGPT gives you, copy, paste, put your name out on it, go. This tool will cut down on all your research like crazy, and it will help you find sources, put them in APA, MLA, and even help you implement them in your sentences. So it's going to save you tons of time. But if you really want to be a good writer and someone who understands concepts and how to get that information and then communicate them out to the world, the last thing you want to do is just copy and paste the task from your teacher and say, write me this essay and turn that in. We need to learn about these social movements. It's part of the curriculum. And I'm making it up. I'm a pretend social studies teacher, English teacher here, but it is going to be part of what you're tested on. It's going to be part of what you probably have to take a state test on. If it's US history, if they're US labor movements, things like that, or if it's world history, these are things that may come up. So it's important that we understand them. And of course, we don't want to be on the JV team, right? We want to be on varsity. We want to work. If we're on JV now, that's fine, but we want to work towards varsity, right? And so by doing that, we have to really build a good essay. Copying, pasting things directly from the internet is not the expert way. That's the way in which we might have started off, but we want to get better. So let's go ahead and have a look at what I would do for this situation here. So what I decided to do, let me go here. Where is it? Yeah, let's go to this one. Okay. So remember, I said, can you list all the major social movements? And it did. And then I picked the French Revolution and Occupy. Again, I asked it to briefly explain them. I needed a little bit of explanation, but I didn't want paragraphs and paragraphs. And so this was good for me to just kind of have a look of what's going on inside these different movements and choose two that I was interested in. And I did that fairly quickly, right? We don't want to spend all night on that. All right. And then it said, I asked it, what would a teenage social scientist say about this statement? And I put the statement in that my teacher wants me to either agree with or disagree with. And that is, and let's zoom in here. So social movements are the most effective means of achieving lasting societal change. Okay. And I said, would they agree or disagree and why? So I just want to get some perspective out there. And here's what ChatGPT said about a thoughtful teenage social scientist. And what are social scientists? They sort of study these social movements, right? Society and different communities and things like that. And it says here, I would mostly agree with the statement that the social movements are among the most effective. And then it goes in, they were critical in reshaping society. For example, the abolition of slavery, civil rights. These were all started with powerful social movements that were kind of galvanized by marginal groups. Okay, great. And then it's going to give you the other side of the coin. However, I could also point out that not every social movement leads to immediate success or lasting change. Some movements fizzled out, got co-opted by somebody else, or were brutally repressed. Also, we need political leadership. We need economic shifts. We need policy, not just protests. And protests and social movements are important. They show the visual of how many people might be upset. But without the policy, without the law, without the economic shifts towards marginalized people, are they really working? And they might, so I'm not going to totally agree based on what this student is saying. I'm not going to totally agree that they are the most effective means. They are a means, but I'm not sure they're the most effective means now that I'm reading this. And I said, okay, that's great. And then it says, would you like me to show you a sample short essay a teenager might write? You could say yes to that, but no, because my essay is a little more specific than this. I've got other parameters that I'm going to give ChatGPT in a minute. Then the next thing I ask is, well, what would a political or social researcher say about the position? Social movements are the most effective means of achieving lasting social change. So I asked what a teenager would ask, because I'm pretending to be a teenager writing this, right? I'm a high school student or a college student writing this, right? And then I asked, well, what would a political researcher, somebody who's very savvy in this field, somebody who, studies this, right? And it said, the claim that social movements are the most effective means of achieving lasting social change is partially true, but requires significant qualification. All right. This is sort of fancy. I'm not going to write like this. I am a high school student, not a researcher, but I want to see what the researcher says. And it does say the same thing, that social movements, they speed things up. They show people, civil rights, reshaping cultural norms for sure. Movements like the civil rights movement, feminist movements, and labor movements have profoundly influenced legislation. So there's that legislation we want. And then it says, however, a seasoned researcher would emphasize that social movements are just one mechanism. We need institutional reforms, i.e., the government policy changes. We need economic transformations, like, probably being able to lend money to people who are marginalized, giving opportunity in the labor force, things like that. So it's more than just a protest, right? Technological innovation, that's something that has helped or maybe even hindered. And then, all of these things, crisis and shocks and things. I'm not really getting this. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but this up here kind of sparks my interest. Like, yeah, we need more than just the protest. We need the institutional reforms, the economic transformations, and the technological innovation. And then it says here, social movements often fail. Many never achieve their goals. So I don't know. I'm thinking I don't totally agree with the statement that my teacher is asking me to analyze here. So I'm thinking with my thesis, I'm going to go with, I do not agree. Now, notice that I did my structure already. Let's stop sharing here real quick. I did my structure already. And then I went out and sort of looked and asked, what would somebody say about this, right? Well, now, can I just take Chat GPT's, what would a teenager say and what would a researcher say about this? Or do I actually have to go out and sort of gather some evidence? You have to sort of go out and gather some evidence. That's why the teacher is giving you this, okay? So then what I did, now that I sort of have my mind on what I believe, right? So I'm thinking, no, I don't think they're the most effective. They are an effective tool, right? I am going to then, I went ahead and said, well, I asked it for some sources from this, but I didn't really like these sources. So I'm going to skip that. We're going to talk about the sources in a minute. And then I said, all right, based on all of that we've talked about, can you define what constitutes a social movement? Because remember, in my intro, I want that definition. That was part of the thing my teacher wanted me. One of the criteria was to define what constitutes a social movement. And then it gave me, social movement is a sustained, organized effort by a large group of people. Yep. And you could probably fact check this by just going to the internet and looking it up. And then I said, can you be a little more creative with it? I'm particularly interested in the French Revolution and Occupy Wall Street. See what I'm doing there? So I'm sort of training my conversation with this AI agent to say, okay, I asked you what a teenager would say. I asked you what a researcher would say. Now I'm asking you for like just a straight up definition. And then I'm like, let's be a little more creative. I'm particularly interested in the French Revolution and Occupy Wall Street. And then it said, a social movement is a collective rising, a surge of people who refuse to accept the world as it is. Doesn't that sound much more creative than a social movement is a sustained, organized effort, blah, blah, blah? Yeah, it does. And, it's a little sophisticated. A teenager, a high school student may not come up with this on her own or his own. Maybe if you're a writer, maybe you write for the school newspaper and you know a good hook, but this is kind of a good hook. I like it. A surge of people. And then it says, whether storming the Bastille in 1789, this is a reference to the French Revolution, but you probably don't know that yet because you haven't done any research, or camping at Zuccotti Park in 2011. That's where Occupy Wall Street was. Social movements gather anger, hope, and a vision. Okay, so it gave me a much more creative. All right. And then I said, that's pretty cool, but I'm in high school and need to simplify that paragraph some. So notice that you're not writing this yourself, right? But you're looking at the writing and going, that's a little too boring. Let's spice it up a bit. Well, that's cool, but it's a little too much. Let's bring the temperature down a bit. And then I got this. A social movement happens when a group of people comes together to demand big changes in society, whether it's crowds in Paris during the French Revolution, which was the storming of the Bastille, but I kind of played it down a bit because I'm in high school. I haven't really learned everything about the French Revolution, or protesters at Occupy Wall Street. Social movements show that what can happen when ordinary people join forces to challenge unfair systems. That sounds more like me, I feel like. Okay. They are organized efforts to make lasting changes in how society works. I really like this, and it would make a really good intro paragraph. Okay. So I'm going to just hold on to this, and just keeping it in the chat is fine, because we're going to keep going back to this chat. And this agent, my AI agent here, my Chat GPT thought partner, is remembering all of this inside this chat. Now, if I go outside this chat and start another chat, it's starting from zero. It's going to use the internet and everything. But right now, this chat, this is like a person talking to me, and we're having this conversation, and it's saving the conversation. So keep it going, right? All right. And I like that. Now, I probably would have given that a thumbs up, and I'm going to do that now. I forgot to do that. When you give it a thumbs up, you're telling the Chat GPT thought partner, hey, I liked this. It's just like when you thumb up on Spotify or Pandora or whatever, you're training the algorithm to say, hey, this is what I like how you write like this. I like this. I'm going to use this. Okay. And it goes, oh, and it saves that. And it goes, oh, okay. I'm going to do this more for her. Okay. All right. And then I went ahead. Now that I've gathered this information, I've taken a position. I've sort of understand what's going on. Now I'm going to give it my task. I'm going to tell it what my teacher wants me to do. And I say, this is an essay I have to do. And then I put the whole thing in, whatever my teacher gave me. And then I put in the structure I want to follow based on what we did. So I took, and let me go ahead and stop sharing there. Let's go back to my screen over here. Okay. I took this basically, and I copied it and put it into ChatGPT. Now, I had already made this for you guys, right? You might just put it into ChatGPT. You might just say intro, definition, thesis, detail paragraph 1, French Revolution, and you might just type it in there really quick. You could probably even take a picture of your notes if you had drafted it in your notes and it was clear enough and it wasn't all messed up like mine were. My handwriting's terrible. You might be able to just upload that and it'll get it from there. If it's too messy, it might not. It might ask you to refine it. But, and if you like this sort of, structure, you can always just keep using the structure that I'm showing you. Some essays really lend themselves well to this. You might have to add a paragraph here or there or whatever, but this structure is what I use all the time. So now let's go back to the ChatGPT so we can keep going so I can show you. All right. So what I did was I gave it what the teacher gave me, and then I gave it my structure. I'd like it to follow this: intro paragraph, definition and thesis, detail paragraph 1, French Revolution, briefly discuss, analyze successes and failures. And then I put here, cite 1 primary and 1 secondary source. Put that in there. ChatGPT will do that for you. Detail paragraph 2, Occupy Wall Street, and then blah, 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 and then the conclusion. And then I say, can you please draft me the 2 detailed paragraphs right now? I don't want the whole thing. I just want the detailed paragraphs, making sure you follow the instructions above. Please provide me with the sources in APA and MLA. The reason why I said this is because I'm doing this for you, and I don't know if your teacher is going to ask for APA citations or MLA citations. We'll talk about those in a minute. APA, they're just a different format of MLA, okay? APA stands for the American Psychological Association, okay? It's just APA style. They just cite their sources a certain way. And MLA stands for Modern Language Association. Typically, if you're in English class, you're going to be citing with MLA citations. And if you are in a social studies class or you're, in the College of Social Sciences, you're going to use APA. Typically in college, you're using APA unless you're an English major. But for all other subjects, many of the subjects, you're using APA, okay? Now, I'm going to show you them in both ways. Don't worry. If you've never heard of an APA citation or an MLA citation, don't worry. We're not there yet. You will know, and you will be able to use them perfectly after this 5-day lesson, okay? But don't get caught up. But it is one of the instructions your teacher wants, okay? And then it said, perfect. Thanks for explaining. And it kind of gave me a summary of what I asked for, all right? And here we go. Body paragraph 1, French Revolution. Now, this is our sort of content, this first draft of content. Because if I just copy this and give it to my teacher, if my teacher understands AI, and a lot of us do, we're going to know that this was the first draft. Let's just see what it gave me and see what I want to do with it here. Okay. The French Revolution gave me the dates. That's cool. Is one of the most famous examples of a social movement aimed at achieving major societal change. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Just want to make sure you can see it. Let me close that. There we go. Now you can see it. I don't want to read to you online. I hate that when people are like reading, but I just want to go through this so you can see. So basically it says, oops, I'm on the wrong one. French Revolution What did we want? We wanted to briefly explain the French Revolution, which it did. Driven by anger over inequality, poverty, and absolute power of the monarchy, ordinary citizens rose up to demand this here, okay? One primary source that captures the spirit of the revolution is the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Okay, remember it asked you for a primary source. A primary source is coming straight from someone who lived during this time. It's either a direct speech from somebody, it's a poem, it's a letter, it's an interview with the actual person, first-hand accounts. So primary source documents might be letters that a soldier wrote back home to his mother during the Civil War, explaining the war. That is a primary source document, okay? It could be pictures of the actual thing that's happening. That's a primary source document. Anne Frank's diary during the Holocaust is a primary source document, okay? And for this, the French Revolution, ChatGPT gave me this sort of document here, and ChatGPT even said one primary source that captures the spirit of the revolution is this thing here written in 1789. Okay. And it said, which stated that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. So it also took like a little snippet of that. Okay. And we can see that here is the citation here. Again, don't worry about that right there. So we have briefly discussed the French Revolution, and we have integrated our primary source. Okay. Check and check. Now we have to discuss the limitations, right? Here it is. However, the revolution also had major limitations. It quickly turned violent, leading to the reign of terror, political chaos, and eventually the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who established an authoritarian regime. Okay, so sounds like it didn't really do much to change inequality, because then they fell right into, authoritarianism. And then it's got my quote here. Now, this is going to be my secondary source. As historian William Doyle, 2001, explains, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, this is a secondary source. This comes from somebody's secondhand account. It was written in 2001. We know that. Well, the French Revolution was in 1789 to 1799, those 10 years. This is somebody else having an opinion or talking about the French Revolution, doing research about the French Revolution. That is a secondary source. Still important. Primary sources, original firsthand accounts, and secondary sources, people who are evaluating this whole thing and writing books about it and writing articles about it, writing textbooks about it, are very important. That's why your teacher wants both of them in your paper. Okay. All right. So we have this here. We have some content here. I don't really know how much I'm going to keep here or what I'm going to change. First of all, it did give me a bunch of information. It talked to me about the fact that the French Revolution was all about the common people rising up and going after the nobles. I might then do a little search in ChatGPT. What's the reign of terror? Let's go ahead and do that. Can you explain the reign of terror? Let's see what ChatGPT says about that. I might want to know more about that, right? And it goes on in here. Hopefully it's not, and this is perfect. It's just like a couple paragraphs. We don't need a full textbook on it. The reign of terror. And look, suitable for a high school level assignment. Notice it did this. It's reminding itself that you're a high school student. Okay. So it says the reign of terror was a violent and intense period during the French Revolution, lasting this year, 1793 to 1794. So that's interesting. It was only a year. I was under the impression it was longer. Maybe you didn't know that it was only a year. Okay. It was led by radical revolutionary government. And you've got some names in here. The goal was to protect the revolution from enemies. During this time, 16,000 people were executed by the guillotine, and thousands more were in prison. Okay, so this sounds like definitely terror. And eventually the violence turned against the leaders themselves, and he was executed, which ended the reign of terror, which sort of tracks. That's how it usually goes in history. All right, so I just wanted to learn a little more about that. Notice that I'm learning while I'm writing. I'm learning while I'm writing, okay? All right, let's go back up. I still have lots of stuff I want to talk to you about. So I'm sorry to make you dizzy. Give me 1 second. There it is. Yes. Okay. So for now, I have this document here And historian William Doyle here, I know that the French Revolution happened during this time. It was about inequality and poverty and people rising up. I also know there's this thing called the Reign of Terror that happened, which seemed to be not so great for the nobles, the guillotine, all of that. But I also know that the movement didn't sustain the sort of lasting impact it wanted, because it eventually, Napoleon Bonaparte came in and he became an authoritarian government, which is what they were fighting against. So seems to me that this goes along with the fact that I do not agree that social movements are the most effective thing. It looks like it was somewhat effective, but then it turned ineffective here. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep going. I'm not copying and pasting yet. I'm still checking things out. I'm still looking things over. All right. Body paragraph, Occupy Wall Street. Here we go. Same thing we did before. We're going to talk about the movement, briefly explain it, and then we are going to talk about its successes and limitations. We're also going to use a primary source and a secondary source. All right. So this one here, I want you to pay attention to, because this is where you really need to revise. So the Occupy Wall Street movement began in 2011, modern social movement. So now we're leaving the late 1700s and we're moving into the 21st century, the 2000s or 2010s, you would say, the 2010s. Protesters gathered in New York City's Zuccotti Park and used the slogan, "We are the 99%. All right. I remember seeing signs about that. You might be thinking, you remember seeing people in the streets of New York City. And then it says a primary source from the movement is a photo of protesters holding signs reading, "Banks got bailed out, we got sold out." Okay, so that is a primary source document. It's a photo. I don't know if my teacher wants me to just say, "Oh, there is a photo out there that shows this," rather than not showing the photo. I'm actually going to ask ChatGPT to give me an actual speech or something, because you can probably use a photo in your paper as long as you quote it properly and cite it properly and put who took the photo. But I'm not going to do that here because that's somebody's proprietary information. So what I am going to do is I'm actually going to change this out, because I want like a quote from a speech or something. But we'll deal with that in a minute. And then it says, in terms of successes. So what did we do here? We briefly discussed the movement, and then we have a primary source document, a photo, which we're probably going to change, but it's a great start. Now we have to talk about the successes and limitations, or the successes and failures. In terms of successes, Occupy Wall Street brought national attention about income inequality, and some of these discussions continue today. However, as journalist Nathan Schneider notes, here comes my secondary source, the movement struggled with leadership, organization, and specific political goals. So we said that it brought national attention, but it didn't have a strong leadership or organization. And this secondary source, Nathan Schneider, points this out. Okay. All right. Unlike earlier movements like the civil rights movement, the Occupy Wall Street did not translate its energy into long-term policy reform. Okay. That looks good. That's a good start. And I've got my sources here. National Assembly of France. This is my primary source in APA formatting. And this is my secondary source for the French Revolution. This is my primary source for Occupy Wall Street. And this is my secondary source for Occupy Wall Street. I just asked ChatGPT to put in APA formatting, and it did. We used to have to do this by hand. You no longer have to do this by hand. So this is great. If I want to keep these, I'm not sure I want to keep them. And then we have it in MLA formatting here. Again, we're going to do a whole lesson on these sources tomorrow, not today. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through all of this and how it works. But just know that ChatGPT did give this to me, and I have my 2 body paragraphs here. I would recommend continuing to work on these body paragraphs. If you were to paste this into your paper and turn it in, your teacher is going to know that you did not write this. And if she throws it into any kind of ChatGPT checker, she's going to see that this is definitely written by AI, right? And that's okay that it's written by AI, but I want you to keep working on these and making it better and better, okay? All right. And then it gave me my in-text citations, which we're going to talk about in just a second. All right. Okay. So now I'm thinking, all right, I want to check out these primary source just to make sure they are, let me stop sharing here. Let me go ahead and check out these primary source documents to see if they're real. Like, you need to go into ChatGPT and click on these things and make sure they're real. They may be real, but they don't fit really well. So let me go back there and let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go here. So I ask it, I say, can you provide me links to the sources, please? So I can go out and see. Because if I'm your teacher, I'm going to check your sources. I only asked you to use 4 of them. They're very easy to Google if I'm checking your paper, right? Or if I throw it into ChatGPT and say, check these sources, if I'm a savvy teacher, right? So here's the first primary source for the French Revolution. So that was that speech, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, right? So I might just grab this link. I don't know why I can't click on it, but copy link. I don't know if it's going to let me do it. Let me stop sharing and see if it'll let me do it. Hang on. Nope. Let's go back. Alternate version. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to Google it because it'll bring me to the text. Let me do that next. So let's just grab this, copy it, paste it into another tab, hit enter, and I'll share this screen with you. Okay. So from Yale University. And here it is. And it's a thing. Okay. So I've got that. I can read it all. You probably should read it all, but you don't have to. But you know that the Declaration of the Rights of Man is an actual thing, and it was during the French Revolution. So it's good to keep that in our essay. Okay. It's good to keep that in our essay. All right. And now the next thing was this. Our secondary source was Doyle, The French Revolution, a very short introduction. This is a book. So are you to tell me that you read the book? You went out and bought the book? Like, if I saw this and I was your teacher, I was your college professor, I'd be like, oh, you bought the French Revolution book. You checked it out at the library, or you got it online and bought it. I don't really love this source. I think I'm going to ask for a different source. All right. But I like the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So you know what? I said, can you summarize the Declaration of the Rights of Man? And it did. And it gave me this quick summary here. So now I'm learning even more. All right, great. Okay. So let's have a look at this. Let's see. Okay. So now I want to change up my body paragraphs a little bit. And I want to get rid of this primary source for the Occupy Wall Street, which was a picture. I don't want the picture. Okay. I want a speech. And I know that there were probably speeches given at this protest. Okay. And so I asked it to give me an updated Occupy Wall Street paragraph with a speech, and they chose Bernie Sanders' speech. Okay. So we've got it here, a brief summary of what's going on, and people were, chanting. That stays the same as the other one. And then it says a primary source that captures the impact of the movement is a speech by Bernie Sanders. And then it cites it, his words, blah, 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 talks about his words. And then it says, however, journalist Nathan Schneider explains the movement struggled. Okay. So all I did was I implemented the Bernie Sanders quote there, and I took out that photograph quote. Okay. All right. So let me go to what I've got so far with my actual thing here. Okay. So I've got my first body paragraph, the French Revolution. It's got the things that I have in it. I actually found a better source for some other things. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And I have my APA sources and my MLA sources. I only have these on the side for you guys. You would not do this. You would just put this in a Word document. But we've got the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which I have cited in here. And we have the this source right here. What happened was the secondary source for the French Revolution was that book. And I didn't want it to be the book. So I asked ChatGPT to give me a different source. I wanted it to give me a different source. And so it gave me this source here. So let's read this. It says, the French Revolution is one of the most famous. So we're briefly discussing it. Driven by anger, inequality, all that stayed the same. And then I put in there the primary source. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen captured this spirit. Now, notice that I took out the primary source document, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to say that. I just say the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens captured the spirit. It stated that men are born and remain free. And then I put the APA citation here. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Just don't worry about that right now. And then I have, in terms of its successes, the French Revolution ended absolute monarchy in France. So discuss the successes across Europe. However, the revolution also had significant limitations. When the French Revolution abolished feudal privileges, introduced equality before the law, it did not immediately lead to true democracy. In fact, France soon came under the authoritarian rule of Napoleon Bonaparte. Therefore, the French Revolution achieved important ideological changes, but showed how difficult it is for the social movement to create permanent political stability. Now, I know that sounds fancy, and you could totally make this into your own words. Let's just break this down into what I have here for my content. So, what do we have? The first thing here is to briefly discuss the revolution. Did I do that? Yes, I did. Right here, and here, and here. Then another one was cite one primary source and one secondary source. Did I do that? Yes, I did. I have the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, and I have a little bit of a quote there, and then the citation. And then I talk about the successes, which is another one. Let's go back here. Analyze the successes and limitations. Did I do that? Yes, I did. We've got the successes, and we talked about, democratic ideas, yada, yada. And then here are the failures. While it abolished feudal privileges and introduced equality, it did not immediately lead to true democracy. In fact, Napoleon Bonaparte came in, and the people who got me that information was this here. And I cited that here. And then a little ending thing. Now let's have a look at Occupy Wall Street. Same thing, briefly discussed in the intro. Then I grabbed Bernie Sanders' quote. We desperately need a coming together of working people to stand up to Wall Street. I got that off ChatGPT. Then Occupy Wall Street brought national and international attention. There's the successes. And I put in a quote here from somebody who talked to me about those successes that I got online from ChatGPT. Now, let me show you where I got these references really quickly. I want to show you how I beefed up my references and beefed up my paragraphs very quickly. Okay. When I got to these body paragraphs here, let me go back up. I hate to make you dizzy. I apologize. I wish there was a way you could bounce around in chats. Okay. But you can't. Let me zoom out a bit until I can, then I'll zoom back in. All right. We started off with these two body paragraphs. They were okay. In them, there was a primary source and a secondary source. In the second, there was a primary source and a secondary source. But when I went and researched those sources, which I recommend you do, I realized that while the National Assembly of France Declaration of the Rights of Man was something I did want to use, and I summarized it, I had ChatGPT summarize it, it's an actual document. This 2001, The French Revolution, is a book. I need an article online I can use, not a book, okay? A scholarly article. And then this Occupy Wall Street was actually a photograph, and I can't really use a photograph, right? I wanted a speech, not a photograph. And then this one here, this Schneider quote, was also a book. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, for these two books, can you give me actual links I can go out to the internet and like have a look at and, understand? And let me see where I put that. Let's go here. Hang on. Here it is. For body paragraph 2, that was the Occupy Wall Street. Can you incorporate a speech or other primary source for that movement? And that's when it said, sure. And then it gave me Bernie Sanders. Where did it give me Bernie Sanders? Here it is. Okay. Corporations do not seek consent to extract wealth from the people on earth. So this is one of the speeches. And you can see that this is the declaration of the Occupy Wall Street. So that's kind of an interesting one. And then I say, instead of a photograph as a primary source, is there an excerpt from a speech I can use? I think it was still giving me some of the photographs. And they gave me one for Bernie Sanders. And I said, Awesome. Can you give me the APA and ML citations for this? And can you incorporate it into my second body paragraph? So it gave me the APA citations, which I need, an MLA, and then it redid my paragraph. So notice I have 3 revisions of this paragraph based on the citation, based on what I wanted, based on how it sounded. Now I've got a good one here. I actually revised it even more because this says a primary source that captures the impact of this movement is a speech by Bernie Sanders. Instead of writing that, I just want to say Bernie Sanders stated. I don't have to say a primary source that captures the impact. I don't need that. And then this one right here, Schneider. I don't believe I kept Schneider. Let me go back to my thing here. I did not keep Schneider because Schneider was a book. And so I asked this, hang on, go down. One more time. Here it is. I wanted some successes and failures from Occupy Wall Street. So I asked it some more and it gave me this article. What can we learn from Occupy's failure? And that became my source. I still kept a lot of the stuff that was in the paragraph to begin with, but I just revised it a few times and got better sources. That's how you amp this up. Okay. I say here, can you do the same for the citation for Schneider? I would like an online article, not a book. And then it did that. Okay. And that's by doing that little finagling, that's where I got my 2 body paragraphs. And let's go ahead and just review them one more time before we end today. This was sort of a long one. Let's just go back here one more time. This is a lot. It's hard. This is a tough thing to do. And even with like ChatGPT, like you can't just, like I showed you, it's going to give you some, citations, but they're not always going to be good. You have to go in and like say, hey, this is cool. I like this, but don't do this, do that. Give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down. Tell it like what you want it to do. That's using AI to be smarter and to do better things. And any teacher out there would want you using it in this way. I would want you using it in this way. You revise these paragraphs several times before you put them in your thing. All right. All right. So let's have a look here. We have discussing the French Revolution, and I have my primary source, the Declarations of the Rights of Man. Then I switched out that book because I didn't want the book. I'm using this citation, and tomorrow I'm going to show you how to cite it. Don't worry, part 3 will be all about the citing. Don't worry, but I found that citation right here, my APA citation, and that talks about the failures of the French Revolution, which is what I want. We got a little bit of successes here, but we needed the failures or the limitations, and I have a primary source and a secondary source. So all 4 things are checked. Let's just go back. Let's go back here. Check, briefly discuss. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Check, briefly discuss, analyze success and limitations, and cite 1 primary and secondary source. Check, check, check. This one is done. The same thing for my Occupy Wall Street, detail paragraph number 2. What do I have here? Brief discussion. I have my Sanders 2011 speech, which is a primary source. And then I talk about the successes and the failures. And the failures comes from Gitlin, I think, 2017. Another source, but this one's secondary. Did I actually get all of those? Yes, I did. We briefly discussed, we analyzed the success and the limitations, and we cited 1 primary and 1 secondary. Detail paragraph 2 is done. Now all I have are these 2 dinky paragraphs, intro and conclusion, and they are super easy. The intro paragraph can be written very easily and the conclusion can be written very easily, but we're going to do that at the end. You sort of know already what's going on, but we're going to do that at the end of this thing. For now, I want you to digest what I just gave you. Went almost an hour on this thing. And then tomorrow, part 3, if you're watching this in the future, I'm going to break down how you do those citations. For now, ChatGPT gave them to you. It incorporated it into the paragraph. It even gave you the list. I have let's go here. It gave me the APA and MLA citations, depending on if your teacher's an English teacher or social studies. Some of you have to write in MLA. Some of you have to write in APA. Tomorrow, we're going to go over these citations and how you organize them and what they mean and what does this et al mean and all that. That's going to be tomorrow, and you're going to be an expert by the time you're done. All right. So that ends today's session. Remember, you can get all of the handouts and the replay and everything. YouTube is where I am live right now. But if you go into the description, you will be able to see, or you can download the notes for this. Today was a lot. I know that long videos tend to bore people, but we had a lot to go over. We also have the free resources on our website. Just want to show you where to get those. So if you go to KMJ Learning, this is our website. And if you go under free prep here, you'll see that you can get all of the materials. You just enter your name and email, and then you click this button and it'll take you to a thank you page. You'll see all of my prior SAT prep, because I do a lot of SAT prep on this channel. You'll see all the handouts, and they're really good handouts, you guys. They're not like 1 or 2 pages. It's practice test questions, it's writing prompts, it's all kinds of things. So check those out. Then beyond that, I just want to bring your attention to TikTok. I am trying to go live on TikTok for sessions, but I need 1,000 subscribers. I already have a pretty well attended channel. It's 20,000 people, but I am an academic person doing academic things on TikTok. So it's probably boring for people, but my KMJ Learning, this is for my college prep and for what you guys are watching me for, is over here, KMJ Learning, and I only have 71 followers. I just started, but if you could go over here and follow me, that way I can go live on TikTok and do TikTok lives and YouTube lives and things like that. Another place you can find me, obviously, is going to be my YouTube channel. I'm going to update pretty much every day here, new lives, new shorts, things like that. We did a lot of SAT stuff last week and the week before. This week, we're doing some writing. So that's all good there. And then, of course, kmjlearning.com is our website. So you can check out all of that there. All right. Thanks for sticking with me for this long. Remember, part 3 is tomorrow. It will not take as long as it did today, but I'm going to show you exactly what those citations mean inside of your paragraphs and why we use them and how to use them effectively so that they're not a mystery. I know they look very mysterious, but they are not. They're very easy. And I'm going to show you how to master those tomorrow in part 3.